Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unraveling a profound hidden origin story. We're going to examine the forgotten roots of our modern materialistic worldview. You know, it's a lens most of us just accept as the natural result of scientific progress, right? But our source material reveals a completely different, deeply obscured lineage. So let's trace this back to the very beginning. Where did modern materialism actually begin? Most conventional histories will point you toward the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, or maybe the massive industrial leaps of the 19th century. We tend to assume our strict focus on the physical world emerged organically, just as we became more rational. But our sources suggest we need to look much, much further back to find the specific moment when the trajectory of human thought fundamentally shifted. For centuries, ancient traditions, including the teachings of St. Paul and the ancient mystery schools, understood human nature as threefold. A human being was recognized as a composition of body, soul, and spirit. It was a complete package. But today, the modern consensus recognizes only a twofold nature, body and soul, or, if we're speaking in strictly scientific terms, just the body. So how did the spirit simply vanish from our understanding of ourselves? Let's trace this historical butterfly effect. We move from the expansive spiritual recognition of antiquity right through a very specific medieval theological bottleneck, and that leads directly into the rigid philosophy of the 19th century. The crucial turning point sits right in the middle, in the 9th century. It was a single event that cast a tremendously long shadow over absolutely everything that followed. The specific historical event that officially altered human spirituality was the Eighth Ecumenical Council. This was held in Constantinople in 869 AD. Our sources describe this council as a crucial window, one that throws light on a massive part of Western evolution. It was right there, in a medieval hall of clergy, that a theological dispute forever changed the official definition of what it actually means to be human. Take a close look at the exact phrasing born from that council. They declared that man possesses an imaginative and spiritual soul. Now, pay attention to what happens here. The spirit is no longer recognized as its own distinct entity. It is effectively absorbed right into the soul. In that exact moment, the independent existence of the human spirit was officially written out of the equation. The council established a dogma, making it strictly unchristian to speak of a threefold partition of man. It became entirely heretical to assert that we are body, soul, and spirit. You are only allowed to be body and soul. And this wasn't just some minor semantic debate. No, this was a decree laid down by an authority as incontrovertibly true, and it fundamentally shifted the entire trajectory of Western civilization. The cascading effect of that decision was profound. By excluding the spirit in the 9th century, a deep somnolence began to settle over human thought. The inner search for spiritual reality was slowly replaced by an external ordering of humanity. We were suddenly governed by jurisprudence and dogma rather than internal discovery. And as that spiritual recognition declined, the invisible foundation for modern materialism was quietly, steadily being built. By setting aside the spirit in the 9th century, the stage was perfectly set for an even further reduction centuries later. Think about it. If the spirit could be completely absorbed into the soul by decree, well, the next logical step was the abolition of the soul itself. And that brings us directly to the sweeping philosophical and scientific changes of the 19th century. The 869 AD decree achieved the abolition of the spirit. Centuries later, 19th century materialists took that exact same trajectory and applied it to the soul. That medieval theological dispute directly seeded the rise of modern historical materialism. It created a straight, unbroken line from a 9th century church gathering to the dominant scientific philosophies of the modern world. The sources point out a truly fascinating irony here. Figures such as Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels are described as the direct descendants of that Eighth Ecumenical Council. Their philosophy of historical materialism argues that the driving forces of history are entirely physical. Anything pertaining to the soul or human impulse is viewed merely as a superstructure built right on top of a material foundation. Without even realizing it, they carried a medieval church's decree to its ultimate logical conclusion. Which leads us to a vital question. What actually happens to humanity when the path to spiritual knowledge is systematically obscured? When an internal search for truth gets replaced by an external ordering, governed entirely by rules and jurisprudence, how does that fundamentally impact the human intellect? Well, the fallout of this historical trajectory was severe. The sources describe human understanding becoming thin and threadbare. Without the recognition of the spirit, humanity lost a crucial layer of self-knowledge. Our sense of self, our ego consciousness, became severely dimmed. Our intellect became highly focused on the physical surface of material things, but completely blind to deeper realities. Because of this threadbare intellect, the sources argue that profound cosmic events became entirely incomprehensible. Complex spiritual processes, such as the resurrection, were reduced by the modern mind to either inexplicable miracles or absolute scientific impossibilities. The very capacity to grasp them was essentially bred out of our intellectual framework. And this brings us to a striking irony regarding modern philosophy and science. You see, many modern thinkers believe they operate purely on objective observation. They assume that defining a human as merely a biological machine is the result of rigorous, unbiased science. Yet the sources argue they are unknowingly following the dogma laid down at that medieval council. They're just protecting a restricted worldview established by 9th century cardinals. The sources even warn of the future trajectory we're currently on. They suggest that if this trend continues to its logical extreme, acknowledging the reality of the spirit might one day be legally classified as a sign of an unsound mind. The assumption that thought and feeling are nothing but involuntary bodily processes could actually become a mandatory, enforced truth. This ultimate abolition of the spirit caused a profound disconnection from the central event of Christianity, which the sources referred to as the mystery of Golgotha, the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ. Without understanding the threefold human being, the sources argue that the true mechanics of this massive cosmic event became completely obscured. To truly comprehend Christ's deed, the sources argue we absolutely must reclaim the ancient Pauline distinction between the psychic man, meaning the soul, and the spiritual man. St. Paul spoke very clearly of body, soul, and spirit. Conflating the soul and the spirit makes it impossible to grasp the precise nature of what was resurrected and how it permanently altered human evolution. By erasing the distinction between soul and spirit, the council made the central event of human history completely incomprehensible to the intellect. The complex, multidimensional layers of human existence were entirely flattened. Because of this, the profound sacrifice designed to rescue human consciousness from material decay was essentially hidden behind a thick veil of dogma. So, we arrive at the ultimate question posed by this explainer. Will we recognize the unseen origins of our modern materialistic worldview? Will we look beyond the dogmas, both the medieval religious ones and the modern scientific ones, to reclaim the reality of the human spirit? Because understanding the hidden history of our minds might be the only way to truly free our intellect for the future. Thank you for joining me, and keep questioning the foundations of what you know.